Munster secured a playoff place with a hard-fought win against an informed Lions team. My name's Mark. Let's talk rugby. This was a really tense affair. Both teams giving it their all, and yeah, it was so close at the end as well. Fair play to the Lions, coming or going to Ireland. Forgetting I don't live in Ireland anymore, but going to Ireland, where they've struggled so much in the past, and putting it up to Munster as well, and making sure that the game was on the line right to the very death. But it's the Lions, they start really well, applying that same pressure. Go to corner from penalty, the Maul making progress, but Munster manages to disrupt, and then Lions, they've got to move it. They go through a number of phases before Munster force an error, and Haley launches a kick downfield for an excellent 50-22. Munster then attack off that line out. A strong carry from Daly brings them within a few metres, recycled, and Evan O'Connell comes onto a pop pass to force his way over, converted for 7 points to 0. Munster then think they're over again through Gleeson, but Landsberg does really well to turn him turtle and hold them up over the line. No try, and yeah, absolutely brilliant defence there. Munster then looking to go to width on the edge of the line to 22. Dan Kelly goes for a long pass, but Kewan Horn picks it off and he goes in from distance, converted for 7 points all. And Kewan Horn, he's been, the last couple of seasons, he's been a real standout for me in that Lions team. And, it's just a reminder of the quality that's in South African rugby that isn't, in the Springboks squad. He's an absolutely quality fullback. He can play on the wing as well, but a lot of times we see him at fullback. Such a great reader of the game, and he's so good as well at reading those passes, but also reading when somebody else on his team is going to break and providing that support as well. So brilliant score from him. Sean O'Brien then with a strong carry out wide as he offloads. There's deliberate knock on from Mahase. Munster go up the line to the edge of 22 from that penalty. Lions then not rolling, and Munster have a penalty central just outside the 22. Hanrahan pops it over for 10 points to 7. Munster's line out then goes to Ryan. Lions break. There's a deliberate knock on from Smith, and there was a clear line break on, so he goes to the bin. Lions then kick the penalty to 10 metres out, but Jack O'Donoghue nicks the line out and Munster able to clear. And a lot of players in Munster jerseys, really delivering tonight. And when you look at performances, recently, a lot of these players, weren't delivering, and tonight they absolutely did it. And a lot of young guys as well doing it too, good mix of players. You had the likes of Scannell and John Ryan, I think, playing their last games for Munster at Thomond Park, and then you had a bunch of young guys as well, really putting their hands up too. So massive squad effort from them. Lions then pushing forward with the extra man, but good Munster defence is holding him on the edge of the 22. When they go for a cross kick, then Haley covers it well to diffuse the danger. Lines it back into 22, moving it wide right. Move breaks down, though, as Sean O'Brien breaks out, but we have a Timo check, and O'Brien, the reason that he was able to break out was because he deliberately knocked the ball on. He goes to the bin. Munster down to 13, and I think they had 13 players for about 6.5 minutes. Lions then to the corner from the penalty, go to the Maul. Munster get in, disrupt, turn the ball over. We then have around handbags as tensions kind of spill over, but Munster did so well at disrupting that line-out Maul. They did it so many times in the game, and it really did, at crucial times as well, really helped them just to, peg the lines back, make sure that they weren't going to end up miles behind when they got back to 15. Munster's defence then, they get sucked in, and Lions they go wide left. Munster run out defenders, and I think as Peku goes over to score, it's converted from 14 points to 10. And, at that stage, you got the Lions hitting the lead, and yet there was that worry for Munster that, that double yellow card period could be very costly for them. Munster then work it into the 22. Now they're applying massive pressure with 13 players as they force a couple of penalties. They opt to go to the corner, and once they've gone to the corner, then it's a break and play. They're back up to 14. Munster then battering away at the line before Casey spots an opportunity, darts, grounds it just on the line, converted for 70 points to 14. Half time, Munster go into the break in the lead, and that was, I think, crucial for them as well, just to have the nose up front. Into the second half then, Munster think they've extended the lead in the opening minutes as O'Brien goes to the corner off a batted pass from Gleeson, but Timo Cech confirms there was a knock-on from Daly just before that as the ball bounced. And also, Gleeson kind of juggled with it before he batted it. So I think that one would have been given as a knock-on as well, because he never regained control of the ball. Lions then dominate Munster in the scrum, win a penalty. They go for the corner from their own half. Craig Casey produces an acrobatic effort, keeps the ball in play, but on the replay we see that he started from in touch, and then he didn't land in the field and he wasn't in possession of the ball. So therefore, the Lions get their 5-minute line out. But absolutely fantastic effort from him. Lions then go to the maul, but again, Munster disrupt. Lions then go to 1-out carries, but there's a crossing. Strong carry from Halakania, but Mahase is ahead of him, obstructing defenders, so it's a penalty to Munster. A little bit sloppy there from them, but like those two young guys, absolutely fearsome, and just both really strong carriers. High tackle then on Gleeson. Munster kick to the edge of 22. They go infield with two strong carries from the forwards before Casey snipes through a gap to go close. It's recycled, and then Ahern gets it down on the line, convert for 24 points to 14. Casey then decides to up the tempo with quick ruck followed by a chip over the top to leave the Lions with a tricky line out in their own 22. But the Lions deal with that really well, and then they come forward. Halakania with a massive carry and then an outrageous, back of the hand offload as Lions get into 22. There's a deliberate knock-on from Casey. It's just a penalty. Lions opt for the post and make it 24-17. We then have a Timo Cech for a possible spit in the face of Dermot Barron. They can't find any clear footage, so the game has to continue for a couple of minutes of checking. Citing commissioner will deal with that, and I think that's fairly fair. Like, you can't hold the game up, looking for, an incident like that where they weren't sure which ruck it was at, so what's the point in checking a bunch of angles if you're not even sure you're at the right, timestamp, the right ruck, etc. So if it was, the Sutton commissioner will deal with it. Munster then work the ball into 22, ball pops out and Casey carries it on. Lions hook it over the ball to win a penalty. Great defence from them. We then have back-to-back penalty conceded by Munster, and that allows the Lions to kick to the corner. Munster get pinged for collapsing the ball. Lions opt to tap. First, Brandon gets stopped just short. Then Halakani as well. Before then, Skuman tries to go for the third time. He gets held up over the line. Great defence by Munster. Absolutely three massive units just smashing away at that Munster defence, and they managed to hold them out. Lions then going side to side inside the Munster half, probing for a gap before Pede snipes, then kicks him behind. Sean O'Brien does really well to chase back and prevent a grounding, and it's a goal line dropout to Munster. Munster then work it upfield. They managed to run the remaining clock down before Casey smashes it off field, full time 24-17. I don't think Connacht will be too happy with the end to the game there, but you can't really blame Casey. He's just worried about Munster. You can't be thinking about, oh yeah, let's do a favour for Connacht. But let's have a look at the stats, then we'll come back and talk about each of the teams. So let me pull the stats up here on the official site. So first up, 3 tries to 2. So no try bonus points for either team, but crucially for the Lions, they did get a losing bonus point out of the game. Possession then 57-43% in favour of Munster, 4 offloads to 6. Meters gained 442-425, so fairly even in that. Clean breaks then 5-12, and that's from 26 and 32 defenders beaten. So Munster converting just 1 in 5, whereas the Lions converted 1 in 3. So much better from them in terms of as soon as they got in behind, they were able to actually exploit it. Territory then 55-45%. Number of tackles 161-171. And I'm amazed here actually because this is the last game of the URC season, and this is the first time I've seen actual tackle stats on the official site. Well, apart from I think in the first couple of rounds they might have had them, but for like months and months, 6 months or more, they've been missing. And I just realized I'm reading them out and thinking, wait, what? Tackle? So, well, I guess well done to the, whoever at the URC looks after the website for getting it done right at the very end of the season. But then missed tackles 32-25, tackle success 74-79. Neither of those good numbers. You're always looking, in the URC to be somewhere around 83-86 is kind of, that sweet spot for kind of a pass mark. So if you're in the 70s, you're not doing too well. And if you're in the low 70s, you're either Leinster or you're really not doing well on the tackling front. So Munster missing a lot of first up tackles, but they did, in fairness, scramble well. Turnovers 1 then 7 each, and turnover loss 3-8. Kicks and play 35-33, and it comes back to what we talked about in the Leinster review as well, is that a lot of the time this season we're seeing games going to the extremes when it comes to kicking. Either you're going to have both teams well over the 30 kicks each, or you'll have both teams well under 20 kicks each, and then you'll have others that kind of are more, more kind of to what we've seen in previous seasons, which is somewhere in the low to mid 20s. But both of these teams, kicking a lot in this game, and given the conditions, you can't really blame them. And then kicking meters 1,015 to 996 meters, so almost both teams going over 1,000 meters. I think the last time I remember, at least, covering a game where both teams kicked over 1,000 meters, I think it was a Scotland against France Six Nations game. I don't think it was this year, but I think both teams in that one, I think Scotland kicked 1,100 meters and France 1,000 and something meters. But that's the last time, at least I can remember. There may have been others since then though. Kicks retaining 8-6, so both teams very competitive in the air. And from the kicks retained as well, there were others where teams are batting it back and stuff, so really competitive in the air from both teams. Lineouts then 11-12 for Munster for 92%, 17-20 for the Lions for 85%. 3 lineout steals though from Munster, and that's when that Munster lineout is actually going well, when they're able to steal opposition ball. Onto scrums then, 1-from-1 scrum for Munster and 2-from-2 for the Lions. Lions so absolutely had more than the nudge in the scrum, but unfortunately for them, there weren't too many in the game for them to actually get enough penalties. And then discipline 2 yellow cards for Munster, both for deliberate knock-ons. Penalties conceded in 11 for Munster, 6 for Lions. So a work on certainly for Munster, get that number into single digits. Attacking penalties 5-2 and defensive penalties 6-2. Scrum offences 2-0. So as I said, 2 penalties for, I think, was it 2 penalties or was it free kick and a penalty? But whichever it was, definitely the Lions on top in the scrum. So let's talk about both teams. So we talk about the Lions first. For me, probably one of their best away performances, certainly in Ireland, that we've seen, for a long, long time. Their run, to the playoffs has largely been built on performances in South Africa. And I don't mean at home because, well, I do mean at home, but more than that. And what I mean is, like, at home, they're fantastic, but also when they're playing other South African teams, they got some really good performances and good wins there as well. And a lot of their wins came there. They struggled a lot when they came up to Europe. So to go to Thomond Park against a Munster team who were fired up, who knew that they had to win to get into the playoffs, secure Champions Cup rugby, which is so important to the whole Munster province in terms of rugby as well, and be able to produce that performance, really I think speaks to the fact that the Lions have taken a massive step forward this season. I'm hoping that it's not like a temporary thing. They're not going to be kind of like the Sharks from a couple of seasons ago, or if you look at maybe the Ospreys from 2 seasons ago, or Scarlets from last season, where it's just a 1 season thing. I hope now that this is the emergence of the Lions and just showing the URC what they can do, because they have a storied history from Super Rugby, albeit a while ago now at this stage, but still have a proud history. And for me, I've talked about it before, where they felt like they were the forgotten South African team. So it's brilliant to see them in the playoffs. And as I said, their set piece went well for the most part. Line out, obviously Munster edged that, but Lions way more than edge. The scrums looked good on attack, really strong carries in the forwards. Hilklani and Mahase, both brilliant. But then you had like Frankie Horn, who has been, I think, a fantastic captain for them as well, getting in there, and doing his bit as well. And there was a lot, I think, of good performances on that Lions team. As I said, also Kieran Horn is a guy I have a lot of time for. Kotze has really stepped up, I think, in the run-in for them as well. Bota was good at hooker as well. And then, Landsberg as well, doing a lot of kind of, donkey work, but doing it well, and really good on the defensive side of the ball as well. And then, Chris Smith at 10, quality player. Andrew Davids, a guy who has kind of, been around, the last few seasons, really kind of showing what he can do. And plenty like Van Vick was kind of quiet today, but that guy has had some amazing performances for them this season as well. So plenty of talent, I think, in the squad. And again, my hope is that they go on from here. The good thing for the Lions was they got that losing bonus point, which means that they finished 7th in the table rather than 8th. And what that means is, we have the whole kind of looming thing of, what if Ulster win the Challenge Cup? Well, if Ulster win the Challenge Cup, the team in 8th in the URC doesn't qualify for the Champions Cup next year. So if Lions hadn't got that losing bonus point, they would have been the team in 8th, but because they did, it's Connacht instead. So it means that Lions not only have, well, they already had secured a place in the playoffs anyway before this game. They knew they couldn't be, dropped below 8, but by finishing 7th, they've also guaranteed Champions Cup for next year. So I think that's brilliant. I hope that they take the competition seriously, because I think they're a team that if they do, they can kind of shock a few people. I think especially the pool stages next year, if they take it seriously, I think with that Lions team, anybody who's going down there, doesn't matter how big a team they are, they're going to have to work their asses off to get a win down there. So potentially the Lions could get a couple of home wins, and then if they can produce a performance away from home, that could be enough to get them through to the knockout stages. And after that, then it's just gravy for them. So I think it's absolutely fantastic for them to get in there. Then let's move on to Munster. So Munster, they've been up against it. We have the whole thing of speculation about, is McMillan going to stay and all that kind of stuff, and people talking about how Munster had a poor season. And I'll put my hand up, criticize them certainly at times, because you have to remember the fact that go back to the start of the season, absolutely demolishing Leinster. They're up there with the Stormers, both of them top of the table. They play each other. Munster lose, and then Munster just completely lose their mojo, drop down to URC, get eliminated with a whimper in the pool stages of the Champions Cup. Don't do too much more in the Challenge Cup when they drop down to that, and look like, they were heading for a really poor season, but they turned it around at the end, in the weeks that really mattered. Maybe they had a bit of, fortune in that they catch a Benetton team who clearly weren't all that interested when they beat them. Then they play an Ulster team who are resting players, rested pretty much their entire squad ahead of their Challenge Cup semi-final. But I'm always an advocate of the fact that you can only beat the teams that are put out against you, and it's not your fault if the opposition pick a weakened team and you get by them. And you have to remember as well, that Benetton team that Munster beat well, then turned around in the last home game and beat Leinster as well. So there was no guarantee that Munster were going to get that result. They still had to work for it, and they got it. And the same in this game as well. They were up against it at times, down to 13, really under the cosh. But guys really stood up and were counted. Evan O'Connell, it's great to see him in that second row. Just so many really good second rows at Munster. Tom Ahern in there beside him as well, as a guy who's only come to the fore in the last couple of seasons as well, and to see those two young guys in there is brilliant. And then you look at the back row, you had Gleeson in there as well, absolutely ran his heart out in the game, looked absolutely shattered when he eventually came off as well. Then you had the likes of Jack O'Donoghue and Hodnett, who have been performing the last couple of seasons as well in there. And in the front row as well, scrum didn't go their way, but Lockman, Alatoa and Scannell all very busy around the park as well. And then you look at the backs, Craig Casey, fantastic performance from him. JJ Hanrahan, only in because Crowley pulled out in the warm-up, so we'll have to find out what's the story with Crowley. But having performed poorly against Connacht, he comes back then and has a great game of this as well. Shane Daly, really brilliant right from the off. Some really early important contribution from him. Same from Sean O'Brien. Kelly, a couple of good bits from him as well. Mike Haley at fullback, some absolutely vital intercepts as well. And then they had, good impact from the bench as well. And it's good to see the likes of, Ruan Quinn, Ruan Quinn getting on. I think he came on for Gleeson towards the end as well. So good to see him getting some game time as well. So, Munster, when they won the URC like a few years ago, they did something similar where they were having a very poor season and they came into form at the right time of the year. They had carried that momentum into the playoffs, carried them to the final, and then they ended up lifting the trophy. And how great would that be for the Munster faithful if in a year where everyone's saying that they had a terrible season, they actually ended up not just being the champions, but dethroning Leinster to become 2 times champions. That would just be the cherry on the cake for them.